All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We've only have a couple days left, couple episodes left. We're at day 38, episode 39, 40 days of 4VKM. And the episode we're covering today, very good one. It's called WrestleMania Storm, Andy Kaufman Hall of Fame edition. And it was released on 3/27/2023, about a week in change before WrestleMania 39, which was in Los Angeles, California. So we talk about a politician from California in a little bit. And what was that? WrestleMania 39? What are we on? Episode 39. So kind of all lines up perfectly there. So it starts off, it's called WrestleMania Storm, right? And what's going on in the news in California these days, or around this time last year, it was big storms, big rainstorms, right? Massive flooding going on throughout California, especially Southern California, right? So you have these news anchors, right? And they're about to kick it over to the weather girl, and who's going to talk about all these crazy storms and whatnot. And they're saying, well, wish we could have some sunshine, right? Who wants some sunshine? Me. This is like the calm before the storm, right? And as they kick it over to the weather girl, and after they said the calm before the storm, she just drops like a bag of bricks, right? She just, boom, falls to the ground. Hopefully she's okay. But, the calm before the storm does that to people, right? The storm does that to people. And we show you the clip again of that time when President Trump had all his generals lined up, right? And if you remember, we talked about the other day, the video that Trump truthed out where he had JFK Jr., and then the people that we think played JFK and JFK Jr. You have him showing himself with the generals from that part where he says the calm before the storm, right? So show you a little NBC clip showing that, right? Because they had lost their mind. They still haven't figured it out, or maybe they have, right? So we got more Bray Wyatt stuff here, and R.I.P. Bray Wyatt. We love Bray Wyatt. Gone too soon. And this is one of the final vignettes that he had done for Firefly Funhouse. It was a weather forecast, right? So again, we're talking about the calm before the storm. WrestleMania is going to be in Los Angeles. It's storming. And we have Bray Wyatt that he's doing this weather forecast at. In the middle of the weather forecast, they cut to an emergency broadcast message, right? Emergency broadcast system. And it's just very strange. You have one of the things he says in that speech or vignette is he says there's a dragon coming out of the sea. It's got 7 horns, 10 crowns, right? Well, that's a passage in Revelation, if I'm not mistaken here. I'm not the Bible expert, but pretty sure it comes from that book. And it's just he's basically saying things are not okay here. things are not okay. So again, it's very strange that he was giving these prophetic messages here, and then ultimately a couple months later he passed away, and this is one of his final appearances that he did. He I think yesterday we just had the anniversary of one of his last in-ring appearances. But yeah, it's very sad what happened to Bray Wyatt, and again, very important to the story. And we pray for his family and and him wherever he is at right now. So we're talking about a WrestleMania Storm. When I think of a WrestleMania Storm, I think about WrestleMania 37. Now, remember, this is the one that I went to. I don't go to all of them, but this is the one that was the first event back with fans. And how did this turn out? It turned out with a rain delay, right? So we've never had a rain delay at WrestleMania before. There's been multiple outdoor WrestleManias that I've been to even, and there's never been a rain delay. So what are the odds that the first event back, we're waiting for, 2 years to go back to a WWE show, and what happens? We have a rain delay, right? It's just, it's very strange. As I'm backstage in the rain delay holding court with my arena beer, and everybody's trying to figure out what the 4VKM shirt means, because they see it looks like Vince, but they can't. They're like, who's the other guy on there? This is weird, you know. So I kind of attracted a crowd here, holding court, as I like to say. And you know, one of the people that went by me was John Laurinitis. You've heard me mention that name a couple times, right? He's the co-defendant in Vince McMahon's trial right now. He rode right by me on his little golf cart thingy there, right? We had a couple other people roll by. Jerry the King Lawler, who's a part of this story later on in this episode. Booker T. I yelled, 5-time, 5-5, because he's the five-time WCW champion, as he liked to say. So it was pretty fun being backstage like that, and kind of seeing the whole thing go down. And then ultimately we got to go back out to our seats and the show began. Now, before they kicked us off the field, they had Vincent Kennedy McMahon come out with all the superstars, welcoming everybody back. I think this was before the storm really kicked in. So he comes out, gives a speech, and then after that, we're waiting for like all the pyros and stuff. And that never comes, because then they evacuate us all onto the off the field, because there's a storm coming, they say, right? And this storm was a nasty storm. I live on the other coast of Florida, and that storm hit my house over there the same day. So it was a big storm, to say the least. High winds, lots of rain, right? But luckily for us at Wrestlemania, it passed in about 30 minutes maybe, and they were able to get the show going, right? So, I mentioned this before. What was Vince wearing? He has a tie on, and there's like thunderbolts on the tie. It looks like storm on his tie. And, you know, there's a storm here at WrestleMania. And as President Trump said, there's a calm before the storm, right? Are we in the storm now? Is the storm about to come? Is the storm about to start? Has it started already? Have we been living in the storm these last several years? I don't know. I don't have the answers for you folks. But all I can tell you is what I saw in wrestling. And, you know, speaking of wrestling at this time, Trump goes to NCAA Wrestling Championship match, and he's there amongst all the Trump Stormy Daniels talk, right? And who's a big central figure now after Michael Avenatti went to jail, right? You have Michael Cohen, and Michael Cohen is pictured with Trump and Vince McMahon from, I believe, 2009, when Trump did the whole buy Monday Night Raw deal in its 17th year. So we got Michael Cohen pictured with Vince and Trump. You got Michael Cohen in the middle of the Stormy Daniels thing. What's Stormy Daniels all about? It's all about hush money NDA payments, right? What's Vince's whole issue with right now? Hush money NDA payments. There's no correlation here. What the critics and the haters will say is, oh, well, they're both disgusting people, right? They're just bad people. That's why they're both getting all these charges. They're all getting the same charges. Interesting. Very, very interesting. So anyway, Trump knows what's going on. We know what happened lately with the CIA being implicated, and Obama being implicated in the Russia hoax, as he likes to call it. And what does Trump say he's going to create? He says he's going to create, when he goes back into office, a truth commission. Now, hold on. Was there anything truth commission in the WWE? Yes, there was. There was a group called the Truth Commission, and I want to say it was 1997. It was just before I started being a fan, but I knew of it at least. And sure enough, there was this Truth Commission, and it's these guys in military dressed as like military commandos, and they have a famous line that they talk about, right? So what's Trump saying? He says he's going to start a Truth Commission, and they're going to declassify all of the spying and all the hoaxes and all this other stuff. What does the Truth Commission in WWF say in 1997? The leader of it, he comes out, he goes, I'm going to teach you sissy liberal Americans the true meaning of democracy. Interesting. Very interesting there, right? So you have the Truth Commission calling all the Americans sissy liberal Americans, which kind of reminds me of a lot of the wrestling fans nowadays, and especially the wrestling journalists. They are truly sissy liberal Americans. They're such snowflakes, right? You challenge them on one thing, they block you. So no tough skin in that field. And you know the beautiful thing is, the 4VKM podcast is coming. You know what the 4VKM podcast is going to do? It's going to hold all of them accountable, which they're not used to. They're not used to being held accountable. They're just used to spitting out whatever fake news that they can find out, spin whatever narrative that they want to control. And it's generally always an anti-Vince narrative. Even before this lawsuit and stuff came out, it's always been like that, right? So can't wait to jump into the fire with those scumbags. Oh, I can't wait. So, what else do we show you here, right? We show you Joe Biden. He's in the White House and he's giving a tour to somebody. And he shows him this letter from JFK that I think he said Caroline gave him, right? And it's JFK's speech where he goes, "We choose to go to the moon." I think it was the space speech, right? And Biden describes it as, this is his famous letter that he wrote. It's titled, Why Am I Gone? Right? Well, Joe, why are you gone? We all want to know. Why are you gone? What's going on in here? Why are you gone? How long have you been gone? What's Trump say? Trump says, let's face it, Joe's shot. It's not even him anymore, right? Shout out Vincent O'Shana. Yesterday, finally post a video. You know, everybody saw the freeze up. You have all the freeze up that he had when he was talking about Putin the other day, right? And he goes, right? That was Joe Biden as he was addressing the whole Putin political prisoner thing, which is rich, right? Because what do they try to do to President Trump? Lock him up. And you think if President Trump did get locked up and he died in prison, anybody would, in this country's media, or any of the Democrats would be saying that this is a threat to our democracy or anything like that? No, they wouldn't. They just want more money for Ukraine. Well, we the people aren't stupid, at least anymore. At least most of us. So, when I see Joe Biden talking about a letter from JFK, I think about the famous letter that JFK Jr. wrote August 26, 1994. Joe Biden, you are a traitor, right? So when I think of letters from JFK, that's the one I'm thinking about. Now, at the same time, Trump's book's coming out, Letters to Trump. He's got a couple JFK Jr. Letters in there. And as I'm doing research on JFK Jr. on Twitter, this kind of blew my mind. Somebody had posted that Triple H was friends with JFK Jr., right? And they were joking about it in Storyline, right? So I'm like, what? When was this? How did I miss this, right? So I find the clip. It's probably 96, 97-ish. I don't know the exact time. But it's Triple H. He's currently Hunter Hearst Helmsley. And he's making his way to the ring. And his gimmick at the time is he's a Connecticut blue blood, right? So he's this rich kid that, grew up in Greenwich, Connecticut, and Silver Spoon. That's his character, right? So, what's JR say? Jim Ross. He says, Hunter Hearst Helmsley, I understand he's good friends with John F. Kennedy Jr. Interesting, right? And word on the street is that Triple H, or he wasn't Triple H at the time, Hunter Hearst Helmsley is going to be on the cover of the next George magazine. Wow, right? So, the only thing that would make this clip better is if they somehow brought Trump into it. And by God, they did! Because what does Jerry the King Lawler say after JR goes through that whole spiel? He goes, he's talking about China. Remember China? I just miss the way he used to say China, right? He goes, I heard China's the reason why Marla Maples and Donald Trump broke up. Oh, right. And don't forget what I told you, Marla Maples, before they got together, she was the timekeeper at WrestleMania 7 when Trump was in the front row, right? So it's all tying back. And, JR says, I think he likes blondes instead. Well, his next wife was Melania, who was not a blonde. So JR was wrong on that on that front there. But it's just, when I saw that clip, I was like, how perfect is this? They have WWE saying John F. Kennedy Jr., George, Trump, all in the same scene here. And Triple H was friends with John F. Kennedy Jr. Maybe he still is. Isn't it funny that Triple H is the guy that's in charge of WWE right now? He's the guy that's in charge of writing the content and writing the storylines. He took over for Vince. Before it was always Vince, right? But now it's Triple H, who they said in storyline was friends with John F. Kennedy Jr. You know what else they said in storyline? They said that Triple H would take over for Vince and all the other stuff with the scandal. It was all in storyline. So maybe it's real life mirroring a television show again. I guess we'll wait to find out. All right, so here's the main event of this episode. It's Andy Kaufman, right? I talked about Andy Kaufman. There's always been a lot of rumors about who Andy Kaufman is, or at least did he fake his death? Is he still alive? What's going on with that? So the story with Kaufman starts out on 4/5. There's another 4/5 for you. 1982, where he has a match with Jerry the King Lawler. And in that match, he gets the shit kicked out of him by Lawler. And the match ends when Lawler pile drives him twice. So back then, a pile driver was an automatic disqualification. So Andy Kaufman actually won, but then he lays in the ring not moving, and they take him out on a stretcher and wheel him out. An ambulance, put him in a neck brace, right? And now he's selling this whole injury, right? Now, how did Andy Kaufman and Jerry Lawler get to this point? Well, Andy was I believe it was called the Intergender Wrestling Champion. So he would come out, he was a huge wrestling fan, and he would challenge women in the crowd. So he'd have women come out, he'd fight them in the ring, right? He'd pin them, and he would just talk all this crap about women on in the ring. So he was super over as a heel, a bad guy, because everybody wanted to see him get the crap kicked out of him because he couldn't fight anybody his own gender, right? He had to fight women in order to win, right? So finally Jerry Lawler had enough, and they did their little match, and that's where everything kicked off. So here's where it gets interesting. You have, before it gets interesting, you have these guys continue their feud on Letterman. So they go on David Letterman, very historic piece of television, one of the top moments in TV history. And it's Kaufman wearing his neck brace and Jerry Lawler, right? And they get into a little back and forth. And, King starts talking crap about him. And, Kaufman loses it. He's wearing his neck brace. He throws his coffee at him, right? I believe Lawler slaps Andy Kaufman, right? So he loses his mind. And I think that's when he throws the coffee on Lawler, runs off. And again, nobody could tell. Is this real? Was this staged? What's going on here? They blur the lines of reality. So, as I'm showing Andy Kaufman yelling and screaming at Jerry Lawler, I add over it the voice of Shifty Schiff, Adam Schiff, right? When he's yelling about Trump in one of the impeachment hoaxes. And you have Schiff, the voice is kind of similar, right? So, but it's not just all about the voice, it's kind of about the eyes, right? If you look at the eyes, they look very similar. But here's the other part that gets very strange, is that what does President Trump call Adam Schiff? He calls him Pencil Neck Schiff, right? He's a pencil neck geek, he calls him. He's said it multiple times at rallies, right? He even did the t-shirt. You remember the t-shirt? That Barstool Sports said cease and desist because it was a knockoff of their Roger Goodell clown t-shirt. So it was Tiffany blue color. You had Adam Schiff's face on it with the pencil neck and the clown nose, right? So, and the Trump campaign was selling those. So where does the whole pencil neck geek thing comes from? Well, Andy Kaufman's last project that he did was called Breakfast with Blassie, and I highly recommend check it out. It's on YouTube. You can watch the whole film, maybe about an hour long, and it's basically about Andy Kaufman meeting with classy Freddie Blassie for breakfast, and they're just trading stories about the wrestling business and industry, and it's a fun little video, right? But and remember, I've talked about Freddie Blassie in the past. He was involved with the Iron Sheik. Remember, he was Ayatollah Blassie, but what did he do before this? He was in the U.S. Navy. He was a Sailor Blassie, right? So you have that military connection. So Freddie Blassie, his famous phrase, and he says this to Andy Kaufman multiple times, is pencil neck geek. That's his phrase, right? That's where it comes from. Pencil neck geek is Freddie Blassie's catchphrase. He's the one that kind of created that, right? Now, I'm sure somebody will find somebody that said it before him, but I don't know. I don't think so. I'm going to say it's his, right? So where's Andy Kaufman's last appearance, public appearance? It's at the showing, the world premiere of Breakfast with Blassie. And he's going through his cancer treatments at the time. So he's shaved his head, but not totally, and he's left a mohawk. But you see that pencil neck like crazy because he's wearing like a V-neck shirt, right? So you see, like it looks like a pencil neck, like when you when you see it, right? So look at the footage there. Look at his face, how it's shaved, right? It looks just like Shifty Shift, right? And where it gets even crazier is that look at the dates of when Andy Kaufman passed away and when Adam Schiff's political career started. Just look at it, right? So it's very, very interesting, to say the least. So you have Trump calling Schiff pencil neck Blassie. His last appearance was Breakfast with Blassie. I don't know. There's a lot to that story, if you ask me. So they ask after he passes away of cancer, and if you haven't seen Man on the Moon, highly recommend that. There's a lot of stories about Jim Carrey. What do we talk about Jim Carrey nowadays? But Jim Carrey was he was the actor that played Andy Kaufman on here. And a lot of people tell the story. I think, who was it? Dave Chappelle just told the story of how he went to go visit Jim Carrey. He was a big Jim Carrey fan. Somebody brought him in to meet him while he was filming this. And Jim Carrey would only act as Andy Kaufman on and off the camera. He was 100% committed to the role. It pissed Jerry Lawler off a lot because Jerry Lawler was in the movie playing himself. And he had to deal with all this, right? And it just drove him crazy. So it's very interesting. So when Andy Kaufman actually dies, you have Jerry Lawler. They ask him for comment, and he goes, well, look, I usually ask people who are friends with him. You know, I wasn't really friends with him, so I don't know why you're asking me. It's sad that he passed away, but, you know, we weren't really friends, right? Now, Letterman had asked them when they were on the show, is this a ruse? Are you guys really just friends behind the scenes, right? And Jerry Lawler in later years would basically admit that, yeah, they were kind of playing everybody. And Jerry was in on it. And they were friends behind the scenes. So now, fast forward to more of a present day time. You have CNN's Jake Tapper. Can't believe he still has a job. And he's talking about how now people have come forward and say, you know, believing that Andy Kaufman is still alive. And one of Kaufman's good friends and writers who's featured in the movie is Bob Samuda. And Bob Samuda is convinced as hell that he is still alive. He, I think, wrote a book on it and basically said, like, Andy always had a plan to fake his own death. So the other person that's questioning it is his brother. And his brother, you know, what I found very interesting with him there is that he had been going through Andy's writings, and he had found that Andy had written about plans to fake his own death, but he would return at a certain restaurant in 1999. Okay, 1999, there we go again. So his brother shows up to that restaurant in 1999, and Andy's not there, but somebody hands him a letter. And in the letter, it says that Andy's alive, he's good, all's well, he has a family, but he doesn't want anybody to know that he's alive still, especially his dad. And after his dad passed away, that's when his brother stepped forward and told this story, right? So you have news anchors in Albuquerque saying that he's there, and that people saw him panhandling outside of Walmart in Albuquerque. And that was a famous gag that Andy Kaufman used to do, panhandling, pretending to be a bum, basically. So it's you got all these interesting little things out here. Now, Man on the Moon, that's the soundtrack that's playing. REM, Man on the Moon, as we're going through this whole Andy Kaufman story. And was there ever a man on the moon that went into WWE? There was, allegedly at least. And that was Buzz Aldrin, right? And we saw Buzz Aldrin with President Trump several times at the White House. There's a famous scene of him there. You have Zack Ryder, who's a wrestler. He's out in the ring with Buzz Aldrin. Why is Buzz Aldrin there? He's one of those celebrity guest hosts of Monday Night Raw. Remember who set up the celebrity guest host? Donald J. Trump in 2009 when he bought WWE Raw in its 17th season. Remember that? So Buzz Aldrin is one of the celebrity guest hosts. And he's talking about, how he was one of the first people on the moon. And Zack Ryder is in the ring with him. And he's like, yo, bro, did you even go to the moon? The radio tells me that was all faked, right? He's probably listening to AM radio, which, we're not going to talk about that. But so Buzz Aldrin's doing this promo, and you have Mark Henry come up behind him, right? So it's the scene is he's dressed as an astronaut. He's saying, I'm going back to the moon, right? And we're going to take WWE Raw to the moon, right? So Mark Henry comes behind him, hits him with a steel chair, takes Buzz Aldrin out. Now, who else kind of took Buzz Aldrin out, or at least, messed with his head a little bit, is President Trump. Because they had this whole meeting at the White House where Trump's going to sign in an order, basically, to give us dominance back in space, right? And one of the lines that Trump uses is, one day we'll ask ourselves, how did we ever do it without space? And when he says that, Buzz Aldrin's face is like, what did he just say, right? He kind of loses his mind a little bit. Now, what else is happening about space in this time last year? You remember you had that mothership UFO that the Pentagon said, hey, there might be a mothership here in our solar system, and it might have deployed some probes to kind of explore the solar system. So we got Jacob Israel telling you about that and saying that he thinks that everything else that's going on with Trump and all this other stuff is possibly a distraction for this alien stuff that could be going on, right? So it's very interesting. Man on the moon, was he not? Who knows, right? But Mark Henry hit him with that steel chair at the end of the day, and Trump said we can't believe we did it without space right in front of him. So it's kind of fun to think about. All right, so why did we bring Andy Kaufman up at this period? Remember, WrestleMania 39, where is it? It's in Los Angeles. Who else is from Los Angeles? Shifty Shift, right? So, my hope as this was going on is that we were going to get the coming out of Andy Kaufman, right? It didn't happen, unfortunately, or at least not that we know or can prove. But what ends up happening, Andy Kaufman is going into the WWE Hall of Fame this year. Last year, WrestleMania 39. And, his name's Andrew. And I show the next stop, Andrew, right? So the next stop for that, Andrew, is the WWE Hall of Fame. And there's a clip with him and Vince McMahon from back in either the early 80s or the late 70s. I think it's the only clip of Andy in WWF that's there, because he kind of wrestled in the Mid-South and whatnot, in Memphis, Tennessee, as he liked to call it. And what was the other wrestlers going into the Hall of Fame that year? It was Rey Mysterio, and it was also the Great Muta. what do those guys have in common? Well, they wear masks. So you have Mysterio, Muta, Kaufman. Is Kaufman wearing a mask, right? Or is Schiff a mask? I don't know. It's interesting, though, that he goes in with those guys, right? So I wrapped the video up with his friend Jerry Lawler, which unfortunately Jerry Lawler couldn't be there in person last year because he had just recently suffered a stroke and he was recovering. Recovery was rough. However, he was able to send in a video appearance. You know, he wasn't able to induct him, but he was able to send in a video message to the fans and to the Kaufman family. And it was that brother who, you know, was on the news saying that he had some doubts about what has happened now that was there to tell the story, right? So, you know, my hope was that Tony Clifton would come out and accept it, and then we'd all be wondering, hey, is that Andy dressed as Tony Clifton? That didn't happen, but it was nice at the very least. And I had that sign, Andy lives, all throughout WrestleMania that weekend, so it was all good. And, you know, Andy Kaufman's Twitter account liked a lot of the stuff that we were posting last year as well, right? So I know that's not actually Andy, but it's nice for them to kind of agree with some of the stuff that we were saying regarding Andy's status, right? So, is Shifty Shift Andy Kaufman? I don't know, but they're both pencil neck geeks at the end of the day. That I do know. And where's Schiff a representative of? The LA, Los Angeles area, California, somewhere around there. Where was his Hall of Fame? It was in California. So, I don't know, guys. But it's very interesting, as I like to say. So, with that being said, we got 2 more episodes left. 2 more episodes. And then we kick off the podcast on Wednesday, 2/21. So, check out the link for this video in the description. WrestleMania Storm, Andy Kaufman Hall of Fame edition. Very fun video. Don't forget, 4VKM podcast coming to you 2/21/24. And 4VKM.com, which is going to be big in the rest of this year. We're in an election year, and, you know, what do? We tell the parallel story between U.S. politics and wrestling and how it's kind of all been connected. And at the same time, we have these Trump trials that are happening. You have the same trials that are happening with Vince McMahon. It's going to be a very interesting year, to say the least. So, 4VKM.com, check it out. We'll be back tomorrow. And as always, enjoy the show.